Shirley Thompson vs. the Aliens, the first feature effort from Jim Sharman. Who is Jim Sharman? Sharman's name is less well known than his most famous works, that is, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I've never been much of a Rocky Horror guy personally. I don't care for the music. I feel as though it reduces the old school Hollywood genre B movies to kitsch fashion, and I happen to be very fond of some of those films. They were acts of beautiful construction. Whilst I have no doubt Sharman loves these films too, this title here is evidence of that, certainly. A film shrinking into a reference to one's supposed cultured disposition is not my favourite thing in this world. I find it overly superficial, though maybe I'm projecting social media posturing onto the 1970s, which might be anachronistic of me. I am very fond of Shirley Thompson vs. the Aliens. Most Rocky Horror fans might not be as eager to praise this low-budget, somewhat sloppy, somewhat confusing, crazed, freeform romp, although what is occurring in this feature is motivated by considered continuity, whatever challenges this film has in communicating itself to an average audience, including the potentially niche Rocky Horror fan base. If one was willing to give it a chance, they will note a filmmaker with a consistent, congruent idea to spoof, lovingly, the teenager-oriented alien B-movies of America's 50s, and with a sense of the visual despite his resources at that. However, hopefully I have demonstrated via these screen caps that Shirley Thompson was far, far from an incompetent production, and is actually more watchable and frankly probably superior to other black and white low-budget Australian productions of this time, namely the previously discussed Jack and Jill Postscript, or And the Word Was Made Flesh. The former's snooty distance from the common Australian, grossly condescending and casually smugly misogynist, don't try to fight me on this, the film was written and directed by two flippant, ignorant younger men, don't claim it for feminism. Attitudes in that film energized Australian feminism when they claimed Australia's male-dominated youthful counterculture was intrinsically piggish toward women, because it empirically was so. And then the latter, Dusan Marek's, And the Word Was Made Flesh, was an elitist project, not without aesthetic merits, although its cinematic surrealism added little to the style, whilst looking down upon the average Australian audience, who were not opposed to surrealism at times. Auntie Jack was one of the biggest shows of the 70s, entirely absurd oddball humour, enormous program. Conversely, Jim Sharman's film is potentially alienating, but thoroughly wants to be enjoyed by an average audience. Take his loving depiction of everyday Australians, his emphasis on humour, and his mining of cultural memories of a populist bend, the 50s B films, hardly Shakespeare or Hemingway, yes? Sharman composed one of the most accessible, likeable, and thoroughly unpretentious of underground Australian films at this time. Potentially my favourite of the Sharman features, though I haven't seen Summer of Secrets or The Night the Prowler, the latter I am intrigued to view eventually, and then Shock Treatment. I'm actually very fond of Shock Treatment. I remember a small group online praising Shock Treatment as the superior or even the more major work of Sharman's oeuvre rather than Rocky Horror. And so when I ended up viewing it, I ended up afterward unofficially joining this said group. Very fond of Shock Treatment. Jessica Harper, Barry Humphries, Richard O'Brien's Cosmo McKinley is one of the most unforgettable characters in film comedy. Superior music, potent satire, creative at that, superior production values, or ones I like more anyway. An appearance from the likeable Rick Mayall, and more ambitious generally, I feel, than Rocky Horror. More of a social commentary, less insular and in-jokey, more varied sense of humour, and displaying a wide array of production aesthetics, which makes one disappointed that Sharman never directed another feature, which somewhat saddens me. So check out Shirley Thompson vs. the Aliens, thoroughly endorsed on the AOD, and if you can't find that, check out Shock Treatment, I suppose, Caviar and Little Black Dress. Next time, Australia's Woodstock. What was that? Find out next time. I can't speed that film up either because YouTube is gymnophobic, whatever, it has the right, but I would if I were allowed to anyway. Find out then, if you aren't already aware of what we're referencing here. Until then, Shirley Thompson, very good stuff, sincerely, wholly likeable, well made for what it is, trying to be, demonstrating creativity beyond its traditionally meagre production resources. Have the best day of your lives, be as well as you have ever been.